providing you an opportunity. Not only to see your daughter again, but to save her life.
Are you ready? STEM entry in 3, 2,
I read the police report!
1.
I was at her funeral!
Good luck, Sebastian.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dreamality. I hope everyone is doing well, and welcome to my review of The Evil Within 2. Is this game worth your money? Is it worth your time? Here are my quick thoughts. Though not perfect, I love the game.
This machine, this miracle, will allow our species to achieve greatness. We needed to start with a mind that was pure and clean enough to support thousands of personalities. The mind of an innocent child.
The Evil Within 2 takes place 3 years after the events of the previous title. Returning as the main protagonist, Sebastian Castellanos finds himself in a dark place. Not only is he dealing with the disbelief of others that none of what he experienced with STEM was real, but he is also coping with some inner demons, specifically the death of his daughter Lily. Enter a familiar face from the past, Julie Kidman, who tells Sebastian that his daughter is not dead, but is in danger. Turns out the shady corporation known as Mobius has built another STEM, and have been using Lily as the core of the new reality. There's more to the plot than simply a father saving his daughter, though that's for you to discover. The game mostly takes place in a suburban town within STEM, known as Union. A town where inhabitants are supposed to live in peace and harmony. Well, all of that has been thrown out the window and replaced by all sorts of terrors roaming freely in a world that is literally falling apart. This time around, there is a larger focus on Sebastian as a character. In the first game, he was mostly a blank canvas. He didn't say much, didn't have much of a personality, and because of that, some people found him unlikable. The team's goal this time around was to humanize Sebastian. I believe they've done a good job. I did like him in the first game, but I like him more now. He's an interesting character who has been through a lot, and still holds on to a lot of emotional baggage. As much as I like the inclusion of his inner guilt eating him alive in this game, I do believe it was overused. Specifically in a part of the game where he says something along the lines of, "You're right, it's not my fault," and then like 2 minutes later says, "It's all my fault," only to change his mind again shortly after. You meet some other characters along the way. It's comforting to have others to talk to in a nightmare like this. At first, I didn't really care for any of these side characters, but to my surprise, I actually liked and cared for most of them by the game's end, to the extent of unintentionally calling out to my screen. Something that may surprise some people is that this game, despite its horrifying and gory exterior, has a sense of humor. At times, it can be as subtle as text describing an item. You can tell the developers are just having some fun and trying to lighten the mood a bit.
Hell yes!
When it does matter, the scenes mostly deliver on the action, the scares, and the heartfelt moments that they set out to. It may not be successful all of the time, but it is a majority of the time. The heartfelt moments in particular were handled better than I would have guessed, and I like that they are in there. Props to the writers for trying to work an emotional scene into a game like this. Something that continues from the first game is how interesting I find some of these bosses, their story and reasoning behind their design. In the Evil Within games, the monster can actually be a representation of something else entirely. Why it's there, what its meaning is for the player to discover. All I'm going to say regarding the main villains is they are very different than Ruvik from the last game. I liked them and enjoyed learning more about them. Something I love is how connected this game is with the first title. A lot of times in a sequel, the events of the first game's story are like they never happened, or maybe at best you get a couple of name drops or references. This is not the case with The Evil Within 2. There are moments in this game that a new player of the series won't get nearly as much joy out of versus someone who played and enjoyed the original like myself. There was this one section I was cheering, I was so happy. I'm not trying to say a new player wouldn't be able to follow along and enjoy this as a standalone experience, I just think you'll be missing out a bit. There are 17 chapters total, and I'm satisfied with how the game concluded. I really like how the storytelling in chapter 16 was handled, as well as the final slide. Overall, I greatly enjoyed the story, how it connected as a whole, and the forms of storytelling used, start to finish. I found it entertaining and interesting. I listened to every optional conversation piece, read all of the text I could find, and studied the environments. I even stayed to listen to all of the music during the end credits. I closed my eyes and reflected on the journey I just went through. And for me to do that, that doesn't happen often. When you start the game, there are 3 difficulty settings to choose from. Kudos to anyone who goes straight for the Nightmare difficulty. I chose Survival, and it took me about 24 hours to complete my playthrough. That was with me getting the most I could out of the game. Exploring every corner, killing every enemy, and doing every side mission available. That's right, side missions are one of the additions to this game. There aren't many, but they are fun. Sometimes they add story elements, and every time I felt that they were very rewarding in terms of gear and resources. I highly recommend doing all of them. The combat feels very similar to the first games, and I still find it fun. The gunplay is fine, as are most of the stealth mechanics. Although going around blasting every monster to bits sounds like a great idea, this is a survival horror title, and ammo can get pretty scarce, so you have to pick and choose those battles. To combat this, there is a lot of stealth play going on, because a takedown in most cases is an instant kill. Enemies have set patterns that you just need to watch, wait for your opening, and then hope you get there fast enough before they turn around. Failing to grab the lava guys should automatically alert them. How can these enemies hear footsteps, but not a body slamming onto the ground joined by a cry of pain directly behind them? I gave up on the alternating cover mechanic early on, as it was not as responsive as I would have liked, and truthfully, I didn't need it once. Entering a brush at times completely negates your vision. It doesn't help if you can't see. I am so happy that there is an absence of machine gun bazooka wielding zombies like the last game or other games of this genre. That for me has always taken the fear out and turned into an annoyance more than anything. Yeah, super happy it's not here, gotta mention that. Somewhere the game missteps in my opinion is in the pretending to be dead but not so dead bodies. I can say every time I was able to predict it was actually alive, not because I'm a wizard, but because literally every time I saw one, I shot it, and guess what? You guessed it, it was alive. Didn't mix it up once. By not mixing it up at all, it takes away from what could have been frightening moments, and replaces them with very predictable obstacles. Again, they're only like 3 skins, so they are easy to pick out. Although I enjoyed the boss battles, I didn't find them as memorable as the first games. Much of the game is a linear experience, with some open levels thrown into the mix, which is a big change from the first game. There are a couple of maps of Union you can walk around and explore. These maps are also filled with enemies and resources to scavenge. You can use resources to craft items such as ammunition, health syringes, and upgrade your weapons. There are a good amount of weapon upgrades to choose from, and you definitely feel the difference, so choose wisely. You can craft on the go, but it costs more resources than crafting at a safe house. I enjoyed searching the maps for every glowing item I could find. This ability to craft on the go is also a welcome addition. Stopping during a boss fight and contemplating where my resources would be best used was fun. Decisions. There are even more decisions in upgrading Sebastian. To name a few, you can upgrade your health, stamina, lessen weapon sway while aiming. You use green gel as currency, and obtain it from fallen enemies. This is another incentive to explore, and kill everyone you find. Let's talk about how scary this game is. Of course, watching footage of it and playing it are 2 very different things. But anyhow, let's do this. To get the most out of the experience, you ought to play the game the way the devs intended. Solo, at night, lights off, headphones on, or turn up the speakers. Atmosphere plays a large role in this genre, and those conditions make a difference. There were definitely some frightening moments throughout the game. I felt a lot of things while playing. I felt curiosity as I ventured forward to see what lied ahead, around the corner, curious to see how the environments would change and where the linear chapters would take me. I felt dread as I crawled around the open world, my ears filled with the growls of the dead around me. I would try to pinpoint where it was all coming from. Sometimes it was growls, sometimes screams, cries. Sometimes it was the sound of a zombie ripping the flesh off of a corpse, like any kid ripping the wrapper off of a birthday present. Okay, no shame, I still open presents that way. I felt a rush of adrenaline when I was spotted. Do I run or do I fight? The rush would be there, whether it was a common enemy type or a demented, giggling, saw-for-hand boss that wanted to tear me in two, even though I prefer my body in one. There was more of a rush in those moments. But to be exposed to the common enemy type throughout the entire game and still retain some fear and feel the rush after exposure late game, that's a job well done in my book. I would pick my brain thinking about my next move and how to approach a situation. I feared the unknown. The explorer within me leaves no stone unturned. And so I explored a lot. Something this game does remarkably well is it kept me on my toes while exploring. When it comes to mixing up random events, the pacing is great. It starts out in small doses. Maybe it's a hidden enemy. Maybe you're not as safe as you thought when turning to leave an area. I wondered if the game would ever use the same trick twice, and if eventually it would get old. Aside from the hiding dead bodies, not the case. Because I want to keep this as spoiler-free as possible so none of you potential players ever feel safe, here's one vague example. I was heading toward a main story mission and stopped when I thought I saw a place that I hadn't searched yet. Maybe there are resources over there. I go, everything seems normal, pick up the goods, and boom! Next thing I know, my whole world gets thrown upside down, and a little side story mission takes over that there is no escaping. And so from that moment on, I would always wonder, well, what if going over there triggers another horrifying event? I think my heart deserves a break. I would go anyway. These hidden events are part of the reason why I grew to love the addition of the open world, because at first, the open world did take a bit of convincing to get me on board. I will replay this game at some point. There's a new game plus mode as well as some other goodies you win after completing the game. I would also like to up the difficulty. The graphics are a mixed bag. Overall, I enjoyed looking at the game, but it has its highs and lows. The cutscenes look good, the face capture is pretty good with Sebastian. There are also some good looking environments. Bit of a nitpick here, as much as I love the conversation pieces with the side characters for the sake of information, these segments tend to break the immersion for me. The animations are very robotic at times. The camera angles are uninteresting. I know a lot of games do this, but for me, most of the time it breaks the immersion.
You're not gonna find a pile of heavy-duty weapons, but be careful. There are lots of times a little fluid in here. Happens when a core goes AWOL, but doesn't surprise me. But you could probably...
If I told you to imagine what a secret agent of a top secret organization would wear, what would your mind conjure up? Did you imagine a person wearing a black suit and sunglasses? Ding 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 ding. The Mobius agents are so generic looking, very cliche. The textures are pretty poor at times. The environments are passable, but man, I would love to see more detail on the enemies. Details aside, I find the overall design of these enemies to be pretty weak, especially in comparison to the first games. The art style is very different in comparison to the first game. The first game was very grim, the locations creepy. This is a big change. Some people may be disappointed with what they are seeing, saying it's much more colorful, far less creepy, but, and I may be grasping at straws here, you're no longer in the mind of a psychopath. You're in the mind of a child, and the town Mobius created is supposed to be a utopia. I look at the town of Union, and even though it's dark, even though it's filled with monsters that want to kill me, it is still welcoming. Considering the direction the team decided to take regarding the story, the town of Union makes perfect sense to be the primary location of this game. The vision, the design of this town, is what I would expect when thinking of a peaceful alternate reality that some higher-ups would create to control people. It's been done before in movies and shows, so the concept is nothing new, but it makes sense and it works. While playing, I was a bit disappointed to not see as many varied locations like the first game. You will see jumps throughout the game, but nothing like the first title. Again, the disjointed experience seemed more fitting for the psychopath's mind. It would be a bigger deal for me if I didn't have fun with the overall experience, and if there were much less environment changes than there are. This game's greatest weapon is its sound. The sound plays the largest role in creating the atmosphere. Why do I feel a rush when an enemy spots me? It's not because of how they look, it's because of the sinister roar and booming soundtrack that follows. The music makes me think, oh man, it is going down. It makes me feel like there is much more at stake than there actually is. I think the soundtrack worked well. As was the case in the first game, I love the inclusion of Clair de Lune when nearing and entering your safe haven. It's such a powerful contrast to the rest of the soundtrack as well as the rest of this world. The melody is so comforting in-game that when I hear it I think, it's gonna be okay. This is a very well-known song that has been around for over 100 years. And the crazy thing is, I played the first Evil Within about 3 years ago. Since then, whenever I hear this song somewhere else, it makes me think of the Evil Within. It kind of brings back the sensation of going through a massive adrenaline rush and exhaling in relief when entering a safe haven. I half expect to hear the nurse's voice greeting me. Maybe now I'm gonna start hearing this cat meow. That is definitely some effective classical conditioning. Voice acting is going to be a mixed bag for people. The voice actor of Sebastian is different than the first game.
All right, stay sharp. We're gonna check it out. Don't let anyone else through this door.
I can be an extra set of eyes.
We don't know what's happening here. You're a backup.
Why are you here now, damn it?
You didn't find me because they didn't want you to. Calm down, Sebastian.
You knew what was gonna happen in that hospital, didn't you?
What happened at Beacon is in the past. You need to forget it.
You sound just like that psychologist the Force shoved down my throat. But he didn't have answers. You do. You're gonna tell me about Mobius.
Is he better or worse? For me, they are two very different takes on the character, and honestly I find it difficult to imagine what the other actor would sound like delivering these lines. I enjoyed this guy's take, he grew on me. The other actors do a good job as well. Once again, this nurse lady embodies that calm yet ominous persona very well. I would have liked to see more variation in the sound the common enemies make. You see the same one a million times, right? So get ready to hear the same growls too. I wish the growls sounded more sinister, instead of sounding like the poor zombies are trying to clear their throats constantly. As a whole though, the soundscape works well in adding to the immersion. Here's an inconsistency the game has early on. One of these zombie creatures is actually talking.
Skin and bones, eat. Gotta eat. Skin and bones. Gotta eat. Clean your plate. You gotta eat.
After witnessing that, I couldn't help but hope to see more like that throughout the game. I could imagine traversing the world and hearing some of that eerie freak speak from afar or within a house as I walked by. It could have added to the atmosphere if done right. And the thing is, it wouldn't have to be done often. Maybe just throw in a few. You can say they recently turned and are still holding on to some of their humanity, or don't even give an explanation. Leave the explanation in a shroud of mystery. Instead, what's here is just a tease. Performance has been fine. The game never crashed on me. The frames have been okay here on the PlayStation 4. Much better than last time around. My biggest complaint would be the amount of pop-in. Wow, consider yourself the bravest soul of all. Welcome to the conclusion. I think The Evil Within 2, like the first, isn't perfect. But like the first, I love this game. It's interesting, it's fun, it's a rush, and it's horrifying at times. I paid $60 for this game, and for me, it was worth every penny. The game isn't for everyone. I mean, it's twisted, disturbing, gory, and violent. Still, if you're a fan of the first game, or this genre, I highly recommend it. Even if you're interested in only the action elements and not so much the scares, you can still have fun. Play it during the day, mess around with the difficulty and the brightness settings. Speaking to the fans of The Evil Within 1, just know that this is a different experience than the first game. There are some big changes here. Some of the changes may disappoint you, they may not. I applaud that this is a sequel and there are changes. They took a risk. Also, this is a single player experience, no microtransactions. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There aren't many games like this anymore. The trend nowadays for delivering scares in a game is to have the player walk around and trigger a jump scare, or have the player be defenseless and run away from an instant kill enemy, shove their head in the ground like an ostrich, and hope they are well hidden. For a lot of people that's okay. I mean, I enjoy those games as well. The point here is, there is hardly any combat anymore. And even when a game wants to be scary and has combat, it's difficult to strike a balance for what makes a good horror title with action versus an action game within a horror setting. I continue to applaud the balance this series delivers. There are no limits with what the developers can do with this series because they have the perfect setup to create whatever they want. I love the disorienting experience, the unstable characters, reality, and the unpredictability of where the journey can take me at any time. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it. You have heard my thoughts, a lot of them this time. And now if you're willing to share, I would love to hear yours. Let me know what you think of the game, of the series, of the genre. I hope someone found this video helpful. I hope someone found it enjoyable. And a very, very big thank you for watching.
What has happened to it all? Crazy, some would say.